Hello guys and welcome to episode 52 of the Beat Your Backlog podcast, a podcast discussing the things gamers like to put off, get to another day, and oh yes, will definitely beat later, their backlog. I'm your host Adam, and today we are searching for our sister on a desert planet in Plain Toast and Dear Village's Caravan SandWitch. The game was released on September 12th, 2024 on PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch and Steam, and has come out with some glowing reviews, with Eurogamer giving it a 4 out of 5, Game Critics giving it an 85 out of 100, and the game making it onto Gamely in the Wild's top 10 games of 2024. However, the Metacritic is sitting at a 75, 73 and 78 on PC, PS5 and Nintendo Switch respectively, so it seems that not everyone absolutely loved the game. And with a name like Caravan SandWitch, I had quite a lot of questions about what this game was. Does Caravan seem quite clear because on the game's kind of key art there is a van very clearly shown, but a sandwich, and it's spelled sandwich as in witch, that like cast spell, not witch as in the food that you eat. Unfortunately, it turns out that the game has nothing to do with the delicious lunchtime snack you might eat, because I think that would be a very interesting game, a game about a caravan literal sandwich, like a hand sandwich. But yeah, what it actually is a game about exploration and loss, and we'll see more about this in this week's episode of the Beat Your Backlog podcast. But before we get into the episode, I would like to let you know that I have soft launched a Patreon for the podcast. It's mostly a place where I before was using Ko-fi as kind of my blog to put all of my content and send kind of people there to have everything in one place, because I really don't want to have to set up my own website again. I did that with Switch Indie Fix and it was a long task, which I don't want to have to do for the podcast. So I decided to start using Patreon because it has some better features. One of those features is, of course, that you can support. And yeah, like I said, it's a soft launch. Like I just want to have it there as an option for people that would like to support. If you do, you will get all of my content 24 hours early. And I will be in the next couple of weeks launching the Beat Your Backlog bonus, which is kind of a series where I will be posting bonus podcast episodes just for Patreons there. And the first episode I already have lined up. It will be my top 10 Nintendo published games on the Nintendo Switch. And yeah, the episodes are kind of, I want to use them as more sort of like, maybe also like reacts, like if something happens in the video game world, I want to maybe react to it and give my opinion piece. I'll also put that in the bonus episodes, and also be doing like, yeah, kind of a lot of these top 10 ranked lists, because I think they seem to be the episodes that people enjoy the most, funnily enough. So I want to make sure that all of that stuff is available for Patreons. So yeah, if you do decide to support, look for it popping up on your feed in the next couple of weeks. And if you do decide to support, I just want to say thank you very much. And you can do so by going to patreon.com/beatYourBacklog. Now let's get on to the episode. And the story starts out with a mysterious notification appearing on your Toaster app, which is also quite funny since the game is a sandwich and an app in the game is called Toaster. And Toaster is the space equivalent of WhatsApp. For the main character of the game, so this name is very hard for me to pronounce. I think it's Sauge or Saug. It's spelled Sauge. So it's a French name, as we'll get into a little bit later on. But it's a very hard name for me to say. So I think it's Sauge. Maybe I'm pronouncing it in the German way, not the French way. But sorry for my pronunciation if I'm kind of mispronouncing their name. But for Sauge, this is nothing weird about that. She gets notifications on this app all the time. However, this one is different because it's from her sister who went missing 6 years ago. Sauge drops everything to return to her home planet of Kigalo to find out what happened to her sister. After returning home, she discovers that her homeworld and community cling on for its existence. Kigalo has been exploited, mined, and abandoned by a galactic mega corporation trying to harness the power of the sun and the people of the world. Sauge's family and friends have been left to eke out a living on the beautiful but decaying world. Sauge's return home couldn't have come at a better time, as communications upon the planet have been severed by strange radio jammers, or signal jammers I think they're called in the game, set up all over the world. No one knows who or why the jammers have been activated. However, Sauge believes that they may have something to do with her sister's disappearance. With the help of her friend Rose's cheerful yellow van, Sauge sets out to explore the world of Kigalo, destroy the disrupting jammers, and find out what happened to her sister. Yeah, so the story is, I think, it's very, very intriguing. Like it has a lot of lore about this mega corporation. They're called a consortium. and they are trying to build like this sort of power generator that can harness the power of the sun. And at the very start of the game, Sauge is like looking out from a space station, and you can see this really cool. It looks like almost like an atom next to this sun, and the whole kind of lore or kind of context behind the reason why Kigalo has been so exploited is because they need all of these resources from the planet to build this massive tool to make this huge, whatever it is, this huge kind of mechanism that can harness the power of the sun. And I think it's it's really cool backstory, and kind of like a very as people like Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson and Elon Musk all have this like space race to get into space first, and they're throwing billions and billions of dollars into it. It kind of feels like a very realistic story of like what could happen in the future. Like the first one's there to find a new planet, basically just exploit it and drive it into the ground to kind of make themselves richer and richer. And I really like that this sort of subplot of you looking for your sister fits into this, because you kind of, as you progress through the story, you find out that maybe something the reason for your sister's disappearance is linked to this Helios project, and I don't think they absolutely nailed like actually telling the story. We'll get onto that a little bit later, but I do really like the premise behind the story of the game. And the point of the game, or of Caravan SandWitch, is you are basically just exploring the world of Kigalo. The planet is mostly a desert planet because, like we said, it's been exploited and kind of like driven into the ground. Everything is slowly dying, but you're still kind of trundle along in your van along beautiful beaches, cliffs and vistas, and it dotted in between all of this very rugged landscape, or these even more rugged, like huge concrete industrial structures. And as you explore, you kind of wonder what on earth they were built for. Interestingly, the game has no combat, it also has no fall damage, and no real challenge other than following the story and slowly kind of upgrading your van so that you can access new areas. And I really enjoyed just taking things slow in this game. That's like the entire point. Like it really nails that feeling of exploration and sort of seeing something in the distance and thinking like, what is that over there? And just getting in your van, driving over and just exploring whatever's there. And it really, like, interestingly reminded me of playing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for the first time, where on every sort of hill that you went over, you saw something interesting and were like, what is that? And you would go there, get rewarded for going there with, I don't know, a fight or a chest or whatever. And then from there, you would see the next thing and just keep going and going. And I get the game has that a lot. Like, it has really cool sort of world, or kind of world design of just putting interesting things within your eyesight at all times, so you're kind of encouraged to go and see what is there. And Kigalo is basically a mini open world, which you can, I think from the very start of the game, you can explore any part of, and as you do, you'll find dusty and ramshackle town of Estella, which is sort of the central hub of your game, more or less. And it's really interestingly designed as well. Like it looks like a checkpoint between two mountains. So the village is built on like this sheer cliff of a mountain. It's sort of like if you've ever seen those like Italian or maybe Greek towns that are just built on the side of a mountain. Like everything is just very vertical. That's how Estella looks as well. And I really love being there. Like I said, it's a central hub. It's a place that you always go back to upgrade your van. And to me, it had a very kind of Tatooine out of Star Wars feeling to it. Like it's very derelict, it's run down, but at the same time, it seems to be filled with a lot of color, a lot of life. It has a lot of very like cool environmental storytelling where you can kind of see things that have happened, and you see that there is a bakery there, you see there's a cafe there, you see there's a garage there, and then eventually you are introduced to the people that own those places. And it just really reminded me of like a place sort of like on the the kind of frontier of maybe the American West, or like I said, like in Tatooine, where you could imagine like a Rogue or Luke Skywalker pulling up in their speeder to buy droids or to repair it. It had a really cool feeling to it. And as you kind of progress the story, you will get to meet the village people of Castello, and it's interesting because they're the people that have basically stayed behind. So they're the people that have decided after this huge corporation has left that no, they want to stay there and try to eke out this living on this kind of barren planet. And these are the kind of people that will give you your sort of day-to-day side quests, I guess you would say, and also kind of the main missions too. And a lot of them is just like really just helping them live their day-to-day lives. So it's things like fixing a water pump to save a crop of tomatoes, or to deliver an unwanted package to the train station. The tasks are quite menial, but I did like each sort of layer of backstory that you got with the characters. Like, it really felt like you were getting to know them as you were doing these tasks, and a few of them have some kind of predicaments that they want your input on, which was quite interesting. And and like I said, you kind of learn why they decided to stay, and maybe also why they're deciding that they might want to leave, which is cool. And as you explore the planet, you'll also get to meet its other inhabitants. So there are kind of like the three main sort of like communities. There is the one of Estella. There are the nomads of Kigala. So those are people of nomads that are basically traveling around. And from what I could gather, it seems like they're really trying to do their best to try and rejuvenate the planet after its overexploitation. So they are trying to make sure that like the planet's natural plant life survives, because the plants introduced by the consortium can no longer live there because of the harsh environment, but the plants of the planet, the natural plants, can. So they're very much trying to preserve that and help rejuvenate the planet, which is cool. And finally, you will meet the rhinotos. They're kind of like a frogman type species who seem to be like the native population of Kigala. And they're cornered into the last section of wetland and forest left on the planet, and they're just doing their best to ensure that their young survive and that the young have the knowledge of like the elders passed down to them. And I really like this area because, like I said, it looks like all of the trees are like, like succulent plants where they kind of almost look like a lotus. That's how all of the trees look, and it's when you go in, it's very dense and wet and kind of like rainforest like. But as you drive out to the outskirts, you can see that all of these trees are just starting to dry out and shrivel up, and that this forest is getting slowly smaller and smaller, which again has some really, really cool environmental storytelling. And I will say about the rhinotos, like, I really suggest that you do their side quest, because I think has some very, very interesting lore about their outlook on Kigalo, and also their culture and the history of the planet, which does help explain a lot about what is actually going on in the main quest. Like, a lot of the backstory I got from about the Helios project, you learn through Kigalo and through doing one of not through Kigalo, through the rhinotos, and doing their side quests. Like I said, we'll get on a little bit later about the main story, but yeah, definitely do them, because they do give you a lot of context about what actually is going on. And I will say that, like, yeah, the exploration is very, very satisfying in the game, but I would suggest you just follow the storyline and not go off on your own from the very start. As we're going to talk about in the next section of the podcast, there are some kind of Metroidvania aspects to the game. I guess that's what you would call them, the Metroidvania. So if you go off and explore everything from the very start of the game, you'll find there is quite a lot of backtracking to do. This is because you have to upgrade your van to basically unlock doors and fully explore the ruins or sites in the Kigala Desert. So what I ended up doing was, because I was enjoying the exploration so much, is that I kind of left the story and just was like, I'm just enjoying driving around in my van and just finding stuff. And what would happen is you'd go to a new ruin and you'd be able to explore it to a certain extent, and then there would be like a locked door that was obvious you needed something, some kind of upgrade to open it. So it meant that as the story progressed, I was basically going backwards, like just repeatedly going to the same ruins that I'd already been to, because in the story, the van would be upgraded to like level 3, and then I could open level 3 doors. That's not what I called in the game. I'm just as an explanation. So then I would get to then see more and more of the ruins, and then so it meant basically from the start you could only maybe like explore 25%. So I would say, like, yeah, I would just stick to the story. It's as much as fun as it is going around with the van. It did feel very repetitive towards the end, because I was just going back to the same ruins over and over again and unlocking doors that I couldn't unlock before. So yeah, I would just say stick to the story. And as you explore, you will find components that are used to upgrade your van. And interestingly, like I said, the van acts like a Metroidvania sort of like key. And the more you upgrade it, the more doors and locks you can open up around the world. The first thing that you upgrade on your van is you get an antenna, which lets you sort of scan your surroundings to help find components. It also helps like pinpoint where signal jammers are in the world and other valuable items. And then you can upgrade it with a grappling hook that you can use to pull down fragile doors, which then lets you explore new areas and ruins of the buildings of the consortium, which is very, very cool. And there are a few other upgrades, which I don't want to spoil too much here, but they are very, very cool as well. Like I like that there aren't too many, but what they have, they use really, really well, which is cool. And it's also cool because your van, as you do side quests in the game, your van sort of becomes decorated with like trinkets and trophies from your travels. So it really like tells a tale of what you've done on Kigalo. And I think this is like a really nice touch. It really reminded me of when, if you've ever been like traveling abroad, like in Asia or South America or wherever, and there are like backpackers there and they always buy like a flag of the countries they've been to and they sew them onto their backpack to kind of show like, hey, look at how well traveled I am. And that's kind of what this feature reminded me of. It was very kind of just visually showing me the things I'd achieved in the game, which was really, really nice. And I guess that's kind of, I didn't really say that at the start actually, but like I said, you are looking for these signal jammers. That's like the big sort of main portion of the first half of the game, is that you were driving around the world, finding these signal jammers, destroying them. And if you do, it's a little bit like the towers in Assassin's Creed. Like you will climb to the tower, then you can see everything in the area around you. It's the same here with the signal jammers. You destroy them and then a section of the map opens up and you can see what else is going on there. Unlike Assassin's Creed, the series, I guess, when you destroy them, you're not overwhelmed with loads of stuff to do. It basically just shows you where you can go. It also lets you access your Toaster app there. So maybe if you are wanting to do a mission in that area, you can now then, after you destroy the signal jammer, you can open the app up and look at where you need to go a little bit easier. So yeah, I didn't really mention that, but that's a big part of your exploration, is going out to find these signal jammers to destroy them. And like I said, you're doing this in the van, and the van is a massive part of the game. And I really did enjoy driving around with it and using it to explore. I think it's like a really cool tool to do that. I don't think the van actually does anything special, really, other than the upgrades it gets, which I talked about earlier. Otherwise, it's just very basic kind of driving of you press or you hold down R2 to go forwards. You use reverse with L2, and you can cycle through your upgrades with the D-pad. And I think on... there is a boost as well. I can't remember which button it's on. And I think if you hold down L3, it beeps your horn and that's it. And it's like, yeah, the driving is just very, very basic, but quite serviceable. And the vehicle is really just used to get you from place A to place B. But I like how it makes sense in the story that, you know, you're in this desolate world. You can't really walk around anywhere. You need this van to get to where you need to go. And I also like that the van sort of felt like a companion character in the game. Like it was very cool, like I said, as you visually upgrade it to see what you've achieved in the game. But I really would have liked it if the game had gone a little bit further with the van, like making you really, really care for its kind of well-being. Because in the story, the character Rose, who gives you the van, she tells you it's like the last one of its kind that still works on Kigalo. And as you explore, like the game kind of reinforces this, because you just see a lot of like skeletal remains of other vans of the same type, just lost in the desert, you know, like covered by sand, or they look like they've been burnt out or whatever. So I think it would have been cool if they'd focused a little bit more on like really making this van feel special and feeling like this is a resource that you don't want to lose. So, you know, for example, I was like, maybe it would be cool, like if at the start of the game, your van only had like a small fuel tank and you could go out to a certain distance from Estella, but you couldn't go any further, and you really didn't want to lose fuel, because if you did, then, you know, you'd have to abandon your van and come back for it later or something like that. And then as you upgrade it, you could get a bigger fuel tank, which could make you drive out further, and maybe they could have staggered the exploration a little bit that way. I think that could have been cool. Or maybe I thought, like, this is actually what I assumed when I started the game, that the van would take damage, because I was like, yeah, again, I feel like you should have felt this van is like precious to you, and you don't want to break it. So at the very start of the game, I was driving very, very carefully, like, you know, sort of if you've ever played Grand Theft Auto, when you get bored and you decide to drive as realistically as possible, that's how I was driving this van. But then I realized that, it doesn't really matter how you drive it. The van doesn't take any damage. So then I was just driving it off of cliffs and whatever, just to take a shortcut to where I needed to go. And I think it would have just made the van feel even more special if it did take damage, because then you really like, okay, I don't want to crash into that rock. I don't want to, drive over these jagged edges because I don't want to pop the tires. I think it would have been cool, a cool mechanic of the game that you really have to look after your van, and then maybe you could upgrade it with different sort of materials, like you go from like a steel body to a titanium body, and that takes less damage. Whatever, you get better tires that let you drive through different so one tire will let you drive through sand, but if you upgrade it, you could drive through sand and mud, whatever, and get around further. So it would have been cool to have a few more layers to the van to make it feel even more special. I can understand why the developers didn't do that though, because they do describe the game as a cozy exploration game, which whenever there is cozy in the title, to me, it just means an easy game to play. So they probably didn't want any friction at all for the player whilst playing, which obviously my idea would do, because that if you're having to drive your van carefully and repair it and fill it up with fuel or whatever, that obviously adds a lot of kind of like survival aspects to it, which definitely isn't cozy. However, for me, I think it would have just elevated the game a little bit more if the van had a few more actual like realistic mechanics that made the van feel special. And I think the van is definitely my favourite part of the game, along with the story actually. But unfortunately, the story does get a little bit lost in translation, and I think this is the biggest problem I had with the game, is that its translation and localization aren't the best. So the game is made by a French studio called Plain Toast, and my assumption whilst playing it was that the dialogue was originally written in French and then localized to English. Unfortunately, at times it's really hard to follow what's actually being said in the game, because I don't know what the localization was or is, but it just isn't right. Like it makes sense. Like there wasn't really any sort of grammatical mistakes, but sometimes the language used was just weird and just didn't really make sense in the context of the conversation people were having. Like at some points when two characters would be talking to each other, you'd be reading their dialogue and it would just sound like they are having two separate conversations. So one would be talking and then the person would respond, and their response wouldn't really be responding to what was just said. It was almost like they were just both talking on the phone to someone else, which was strange. Also, the story, there is a lot of back and forth between like, are characters good? Are they bad? Are they good again? Oh, they're trying to like play you off as like who is really the kind of bad guy within the game. But that just completely got lost on me, because it was just really hard to tell at what stage people were at with whether they were good or bad. For example, there are these characters called the SandWitches, and you're like by the end of the game, I had no idea on the spectrum where these characters were on. Are they trying to help you? Are they not trying to help you? Like, what is their main goal within the story? Like, what are they actually trying to do? Which was a little bit, like, just weird. Like, just by the end of the story, it was just very much like, whatever. I kind of get the gist of what is going on, but the actual details are just completely lost because the writing was just confusing. So, for example, there is this huge storm which you'll see all the time in the game. Like it's a very big focal point of the story, called the Tarask, which is supposed to play a major part in the story. But again, by the end of the game, I completely missed the point about what the Tarask was, who caused it, and like why it was important to your sister's disappearance, because the story was just really hard for me to follow. And that's why I said before, I suggest you do the Rhinotaur's side quest, specifically a character called Hylas, because here the lore and the backstory of Kigalo is way better explained and helped me understand what was actually going on. And I think it might have been because the Hyla, like, they don't speak the best English, like purposefully they don't speak, because it's like a foreign language for them in game. But I think the way it was written, it just made more sense because it was just simpler and just more to the point than a lot of the other dialogue was in the game. So definitely, if you want to know more about the story and about what is going on, definitely go and do Hyla's side quest. And again, like down to the localization, it also comes down to like things like some kind of sayings, like some jokes, some metaphors, just were that obviously makes sense in French just weren't localized well into English, so they don't really have the same impact as they would have done in their original language, which was unfortunate. And also sometimes the dialogue in the game mixes up pronouns a lot, where one character might call another they, and then a different character might call the same character she or he. And I know that this game was designed to be very, very inclusive, so I know that they were purposefully using proper pronouns. But like I said, there was a couple of times in the game where I was like, okay, before they were a they and now they're a she or a he. And it just became very distracting trying to keep track of the genders of characters in the game. And even now at the end of the game, I'm not sure if Salga is a they or a she. Because it just wasn't really that defined. Like I was like, are they using they because they are non-binary, or are they using they because this is some quirk of the French language? It was and it hadn't been localized properly, so it was very distracting to kind of try to think of like who they are, what their pronouns are, what I should use in this review. And it's just unfortunate because by the end of the game, I just didn't really care what was happening in the story. Even like the reveal of what happened to Salga's sister felt just very underwhelming, which was a shame because at the very start of the game, I was like really into like what had happened to her, why are we getting this notification? What's going on this planet? And like I said, the kind of context and lore of the Helios project is cool, but the actual main story just kind of petered out very sadly. But what didn't peter out is that the game is very, very, very beautiful. I took so many pictures of the van with the breathtaking landscape of Kigali behind it. Interestingly, growing up, I really used to be into like Land Rovers, like the vehicle Land Rover. My dad had an E-Reg Defender 90. If you're a Land Rover person, hopefully you know what that is. And we would go to Land Rover shows almost every weekend in the summer. And, you go to the show and basically all you're there to do is look at Land Rovers. I remember like back then I would just take lots of photos of my dad's Landy, like it would be parked somewhere looking cool. You'd have like the mud splashed along the door, whatever. And I just take photos of it, and I had the same feeling taking photos of the van in Caravan SandWitch. It just really reminded me of those days so much. Like felt very nostalgic. And trying to get in the game, I was trying to get the van in the best kind of position with the nicest background. There is a written review of the game that has a lot of my screenshots in it. If you're interested to see it, the link is down in the description. But I really, really wish, and maybe I missed it because sometimes photo modes are like hidden within games, but I didn't find it at all. And I really wish I either had if it already has one, or I wish that the game had its own one where you get rid of the UI, because it is such a pretty game, and like I said, it has these amazing vistas. The art style, if you've ever played Sable, it's not really similar to Sable. Like it's very similar in like its sort of setting, like this empty desert world where all of the art is very like simplified. There's not a lot of shadows, there's not a lot of outlines. It's very painterly. Or if you've ever played the game Rime, which came out years ago by, I think, I can't remember what they were called, like Tequila Works, I think. It's very much like that, or maybe what is that game? Is it Eco or The Last Guardian? It's kind of like that art style, but it's very flat, very kind of 2D-ish in a sense, but looks very striking and beautiful. That's how the game looks. And it's just I just wish there was a photo mode where I could get rid of the UI to take more pictures of the Land Rover and of the world, not the Land Rover, of the van and the world, because it's just a very pretty game. And I really liked, like I said before, visually how the world was designed. Like it's very ramshackle. Nothing looks new. Everything looks like every item in the game looks like it has been used and then used again and then used again. And every item has its own sort of story behind it, because resources are so limited on this planet that they have to just recycle and reuse all the time. I love this direction. Like I said before about Estella, it really reminds me of the original Star Wars trilogy. That everything feels like it has a story already, even if as you're just coming into this new story. And obviously I think this is one of the reasons why the first 3 Star Wars movies work so well, because everything just felt so aged and lived in, and definitely Kigali feels like that too in Caravan SandWitch. And the only thing I wasn't the biggest fan was the actual character designs. Like I feel like the characters look a little bit too clean and smooth compared to the rest of the world, and they don't really fit in. Like they feel like characters that have been taken from another game and then put into this game. I kind of thought it through and was like, with Salge, maybe it makes sense because she has been living on a space a space station, like a big city. So maybe her, her clothes should feel a little bit less ragtag, and maybe she feels a bit more modern. But it just felt like, the styling was everything was just too smooth, too clean. The lines were too clean. The clothing was too clean. It just didn't really feel like they had like they were living in this world, even though everything else in the world did live in it. So that was the only bit of criticism I had about the game art. And that kind of brings us on then to the conclusion of the episode, and should you buy Caravan SandWitch? And I think Caravan SandWitch is a great game about exploration. You get to explore the beautiful but grimy world of Kigalo and learn the stories of the people that decided to hang on after their world started to die. Driving your van around the planet is a joy, and the game is a relaxing experience that reminded me of games like Sable. The lore behind the game is great, with the monolithic concrete structures sprouting up out of the desert sands of the planet just begging to be explored. However, the game's story loses its way because of confusing translations and localizations, and though the van is fun to drive, it does not feel as much as a character as I would have liked. Nevertheless, I still think Caravan SandWitch is worth picking up if you want to leisurely explore a beautiful post-apocalyptic world and want to do it in a relatively short time, because the game only took about 7 hours to beat. I wanted to turn over every leaf in this game, and if you enjoy games like Sable, then you should definitely pick up Caravan SandWitch, give it a whirl, and especially if you can get the game on sale, which it is quite often. So yeah, that was the review. Like I said, I think in conclusion, I would also be around this like 75 range on the Metacritic scale. I was playing this game whilst I was making my list for the top 10 games of 2024, which you can find on podcast feeds if you haven't listened to it already. And when I first started it, I was like, it's a shame that I'm making this list now, because this game would have been on it. But the more I played, the more I kind of tailed off to have been like, I don't think it would have made it onto my top 10, but it definitely would have been a shout out of like, if you want to play a game like this, an exploration game, you should definitely try it out. And I do really enjoy the game. Like, I think it does have some flaws, especially the translation and localization, which do kind of let it down a little bit. But it is nevertheless a really fun, enjoyable, relaxing, peaceful experience. It shows that games don't need combat. They don't need a lot of difficulty or any difficulty at all to enjoy. And I just really wish that they'd done a little bit more with the van, because the van is supposed to be such an integral part to the game. It doesn't really feel like that at all times. But still, yeah, very good game and very enjoyable. And yeah, I'd love to know what you thought of Caravan SandWitch if you've already played it. Did you enjoy the art? Did you enjoy the van? What did you think of the localization? You can let me know, as always, by going to the comments on Spotify if you're listening on Spotify and just leaving a comment there. Or you can, of course, hit me up on social media on Blue Sky, which is just Beat Your Backlog podcast, search there. And you can, of course, join the Beat Your Backlog Discord server, the link of which is down in the description below. And if you are finishing this episode and kind of in the mood to listen to another episode about a game that is, maybe like more chilled out, doesn't have any combat, then make sure you check out episode 33 about Harold Halibut, one of my games of the year from 2024. And yeah, if you haven't done so already, make sure you check out my game of the year episode. I think it's episode 50, and also my my episode about the most anticipated games of 2025, which is episode 51. And let me know on those episodes what your game of the year was, and also what game you were looking forward to the most in 2025. And before we go, guys, just a reminder that Beat Your Backlog is a new podcast and needs your support. So if you've enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing and or following wherever you're listening, and leaving us a 5-star review. And like I said at the start, we do have a Patreon now. The link will be down in the description. If you don't want to go to the description, it's patreon.com/Beat Your Backlog. You can also follow there for free. So all of the content will go up there. You'll get a notification whenever it goes live for everyone. But if you do want to subscribe and support, you can do so. I think we have a $2 level and a $5 level, which will get you everything 24 hours early, and it will get you access to the Beat Your Backlog bonus content, which will be going live in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.